Thank you, Lascan. Minister, we've had some time to digest the budget and assess its impacts. Yesterday when I spoke, I was happy to recognise some of the positive changes in the budget that will benefit different groups of people. I also said that this is an election budget. It screams it from the rooftops. And as the Taoiseach himself said, he wouldn't apologise for any of the benefits or double payments contained in this budget, or early payments. And of course, who would, Minister? That puts money in people's pockets, and that matters. However, we have had time since to reflect and better analyse this budget and look at the real, ongoing, lasting impacts it will have on people. Now, I had a look at the Parliamentary Review of Budget 2025 today, and that certainly provides some interesting insights. But just first, on the taxation side, this budget was largely progressive. There were some blips. Social Justice Ireland reminds us that, yet again, workers earning between 15 and €20 per hour gained least from this budget. In this budget, a single person on €30,000 will gain $534 per week, whereas a couple, one earner, on the same amount, 30,000, will gain just 55 cents per week. I also saw in your tax policy changes document, the one you gave us yesterday, that a married couple on one income, a PAYE worker on 25,000, will actually be paying a slightly higher effective tax rate in 2025 than last year. It's increased from 5.3 to 5.4%. But as I said, most of it is progressive. But I mean, that's interesting. If you compare the lowest, it's gone from 5.3 to 5.4, and the highest, an income earner on 175,000, their effective tax rate has decreased by about 0.6%. So it's progressive mostly, but not entirely, and not progressive enough. But coming back to the Parliamentary Review of the budget, they've done an analysis to selected social welfare rates, minimum wage and average weekly earnings for the last 4 to 5 years, 2021 to 2025. Now, for the minimum wage, that has increased by 13.3%, and that's good. Most of the others decreased, and I'll come back to that in a second. But what I find interesting, Minister, is that it's not the state that pays the minimum wage. It's employers. So a headline of 13.3% increase in 5 years, and of course I support it. We need more. But it's not the state that's paying it. It's small and medium-sized businesses paying, and many of those businesses are reviewing their viability because of all the extra costs of doing business. This budget has increased the cost of doing business, and a lot of people think business is big business, but most of the business in this country is small business. They're in our local towns and villages, and we will see the fallout from the impact of this budget in the coming 12 months. But just getting back to the Parliamentary Review of the real change in average earnings, social welfare, taking inflation into account. Minister, average weekly earnings fell by 1.2% over the last 5 years. And if you look, they took 5 social welfare payments. Contributory state pension fell by 2.6% over the last 5 years. Non-contributory state pension fell by 1.8%. Widows' pension increased by 0.6%, and working age supports increased by 1.1%, but carers' allowance fell by 0.4% over the last 5 years. Now, those are the real figures. And despite what we hear from ministers about the impact of this budget, that's the reality of it. I also had a look at the commentary from Social Justice Ireland that clearly state that the €12 core social welfare rate increase is totally inadequate, and €25 is needed so that the government could benchmark social welfare rates to 27.5% of average weekly earnings, because, Minister, that was the target set by government back in 2007, and we're not getting closer. They also state there's been no attempt to reduce poverty in line with your government's own targets in the roadmap for social inclusion. But perhaps the most damning response refers to the one-off measures and double payments. What the Taoiseach said he wouldn't apologise for, and as I said, nobody would. But one-offs are no solution to the challenge of poverty and income adequacy. Indeed, when you strip them out, as they will be in the next budget or the budget after, households on fixed incomes have been left watching in dismay as all other groups stretch their lead over the poorest, and income gaps will widen further. As Social Justice Ireland says, a €25 increase in core social welfare rates would enable households to buy essentials routinely and not just as treats. And Minister, I've asked for this at several budgets. Will you please look at making tax credits refundable? It makes such a difference to low-paid workers. Minister, yesterday I just got a chance to say I was disappointed that there was no cost of disability payment. And while a €400 one-off is welcome, the cost of disability is ongoing and also cannot be tackled with a one-off payment. And finally, Minister, I searched and searched looking for funding for roads infrastructure that we so badly need in the northern and western region to try and close the ever-widening economic gap. The upgrading of the N17 not to Colooney has to be an absolute priority. And despite my reading and rereading of the section titled Road Networks and Road Safety, there was no mention of the N17. I recognise it's just one piece in the jigsaw puzzle that will deliver balanced regional development, which only got 2 mentions in the entire budget: regional airports and urban regeneration. Minister, that won't cut the mustard.